Okay, this video is called Should You Trust the Science? And basically what's happening is science is becoming big money just bullying people. The scientists, are controlled by big money because scientists don't have any money. So to get grants, they just have to please big money. And it's a bigger problem than it sounds because other people are dependent on the outcome of their research. So here's a guy presenting their research results, and it's a joke. They're just puppy dogs that do whatever they're told to promote the products of corporations. And a lot of people suffer by that. I mean, it's not funny if you go get chemo and the chemo doesn't work at all and it just poisons you, okay, which, can very much potentially happen. And then in the year 2023, there were over 10,000 research papers retracted from the journals. I mean, do you realize how ridiculous that is? If you go back to around the year 10,000, there would maybe be 100 papers retracted in the whole world. Now there's over 10,000 papers retracted in 2023, a new record. That's outrageous. Okay, what that's basically saying is the papers are a joke. And who's held accountable for retracting over 10,000 papers? Okay. What that means is science in this country has become a joke. And you'll often see it's just people being bullied. The same people that say, clean up these areas are not cleaning up themselves. Okay? And then here's another joke. Oh, this is such a great idea, it's going to be forced on you. Well, guess what? If something was really a great idea, wouldn't everybody just want it? And here's the other thing too. Nowadays, when a scientist comes up with a new idea, they don't say, hey, that's great, that's a brilliant idea. They attack the guy and try to screw him over because big money is making money off the system exactly the way it was. And that's one of the things I've been frustrated in medicine. As soon as you come up with a new idea, that means you have to challenge an established paradigm, and then all of a sudden you get this basic backlash of wrath. So the joke here in the plumbing school is because he's not showing his butt crack, he said he's dishonoring the profession, and that's the way it is in medicine. You go like, well, we can actually cure this patient, with diet. Oh, you shut up. Okay, now here's a guy who's pretty interesting. Tyrone Hayes, this black guy, was at Harvard. He had gotten a scholarship. He was doing research in endocrinology, and he figured out that the herbicide atrazine was a very powerful estrogenic chemical. That's the one sprayed like on the GMO corn, okay? And he found out it would turn the male frog into a female. And so when he published that, the corporations got very pissed off at him. They tried to get him fired, to take all his funding away. And I'll give the guy credit. He fought back against it, and he published all his data. He kept publishing his data, and he said, look, I got my scholarship to do something good, and I did something good, so give me a break. So I give him credit. That's real important, his data. And it came out, additional stuff from his work, that atrazine is a mitochondrial inhibitor, and the fact that it's a mitochondrial inhibitor means it's probably also, a neurotoxin, and if it's also a neurotoxin, it might be a carcinogen. If it's inhibiting mitochondrial function, things that inhibit mitochondria can be neurotoxins, can be potentially contributing to mitochondrial injury, which through the metabolic theory of cancer means they could potentially be contributing to cancer growth, cancer formation. So that was good, brilliant work. And so what happens when you do good, brilliant work? You get attacked and they try to fire you, take your grant money away, discredit you, slander you, etc. That's where things are at in the modern world. Okay, here's the lady, Minna Johannson. She was applying for her PhD, and she had done a study of the abdominal aorta ultrasound aneurysm screening studies, and she felt they were overrated. There was a decline in the public in smoking, and that was leading to less incidence of clinically relevant abdominal aortic aneurysms. So she published her data, and all these vascular surgeons and their associated colleagues got super pissed off at her. She was screamed at in scientific meetings. She got all these anonymous hate emails, and they were yelling things at her like, think about all the men you've killed. How can you sleep at night? And I tell you, I've seen the same thing. I had a friend who's a molecular biologist. He had another friend who was sort of a biochemist, and he figured out that high fructose corn syrup was routinely contaminated with mercury. He published his data. They had him fired. They then tried to blacklist the person so they can't get a job ever again in their field. T. Colin Campbell, when he published his data on protein, they tried to fire him from Cornell, but luckily he was protected by his tenure. This sort of thing happens all the time. I can assure you, I personally know people this stuff is happening to. So what I'm trying to say is people say, oh, the Catholic Church, they hassled Galileo for his science. It was more so for making fun of the Pope. And yeah, they did overdo it, but that's a minor thing. This is the standard of what happens to scientists when they publish something useful that the corporations don't like. This has happened to numerous scientists. Another scientist did research on glyphosate. He got in a bunch of trouble and they block his funding, try to get him fired. This is the routine. So it's good that people are aware of this. They tried to not only get her fired, they tried to get her blacklisted from her field, the same type of thing. Okay, and these modern Ivy League schools, they become largely a joke. Every month new papers come out about them, falsifying their data, lying and playing other games. Harvard was originally formed by like Puritans, okay? When it was religious, it'll try to be honest at least, okay? And you look at all the Ivy League textbooks, and I've gone through them, they're all a joke, I can assure you. So here it is, the cancer researchers, 37 studies, fraud coming out of Harvard, okay? 37 studies. Okay, and then look what the stuff they're doing. They're psychiatrists. What a joke they are. They're justifying selling amphetamines, giving amphetamines to children for hyperactive behavior. It's ridiculous. The long-term behavior, the long-term outcomes of these things are terrible. And what I'm trying to say is that's what happens. The Harvard and other Ivy League academics, they want to kiss butt to the big corporations, big pharma and stuff, and big food, because that's how they get money, their grant money. Then that's how they can publish a study and get promoted. So they're selling out the public. They're selling out the children, okay? They're poisoning children, okay? Now, a regular person wouldn't poison a child. Even if you say, I'll give you, $1,000. They go, no, I'm not going to do that to a kid. Screw off. But these guys will do it, okay? And these are the guys that are in the Ivy League institutions. That's why you wonder why medicine can't fix itself. I'm telling you, it's because it's an ethical problem, not a science or a technology problem. We already know how to cure most of the chronic diseases with, diet and avoidance of toxicology. And I've gone through these books here, like the pathophysiology of heart disease. They're all a joke. I can tell you all the internal medicine books are a joke. All the internal medicine subspecialty books are a joke. And then the reason's obvious if you understand them. They all say the same thing. Disease is associated with aging. It seems to be partly genetic. It might be partly due to an infection. So we don't know for sure, so you might as well take our pill, try to slow it down. Our pill doesn't work so well, then send the patient to surgery. They're all the same. It's a joke. And then you look at the nutrition data, where they eat a plant-based diet, there's zero hypertension, there's zero type 2 diabetes, there's zero obesity. Okay, so yeah, I talked about all those textbooks being a joke. And then look at the crap that comes out of Harvard. This is the Harvard School of Public Health. Supposedly it should be the best research institution in the whole United States and the whole world. And here's the Walter Willett. This guy's a clown. Okay, look at his nutrition pyramid. He recommends oils right near the base of the pyramid. Those are and he calls them healthy fats and healthy oils. That's a crock of BS. Just so you know, Dr. McDougall says, don't buy this good fats nonsense. That's a toxic slogan. Okay. And he says healthy fats are olive oil, canola oil, soy, corn oil, sunflower seed, peanut oil. I mean, this is nonsense. Margarine, trans fat-free margarine, nonsense. And he recommends eating fish and poultry and eggs. You feed eggs to animals to cause atherosclerosis. It's absolutely insane. Okay, and then he says it's okay to drink alcohol in moderation, whatever that means. Take a vitamin every day, a multivitamin, yeah, right, so you get overloaded with iron and copper and who knows what else. This is ridiculous. Then he puts dairy into his health pyramid. Just so you know, if I was like teaching a college class in nutrition or a medical school class in nutrition and somebody wrote that to a student, I would flunk them. Okay, and I told you, once you go down this unethical path that there is no God, everything goes to crap, and big money controls everything. They want to gaslight the public, so they destroy the museums. You got statues of feces in the modern art museums. That's not art. The buildings have been desecrated. A typical building looks like an animal cage, and there's a statue of a turd in front of it, as Thomas Wolfe, the great American writer, had said, and it's true. Think about the buildings you see. Okay, and psychology is turned into a tool of the establishment. What used to be, people would say the priesthood was just catering to the secular ruler. Now we have the psychologist catering to the secular big money establishment. So look what she says. Are you ready for me to diagnose your totally normal reaction to our SHITTY society as a mental illness so I can get you addicted to mind-altering drugs for the rest of your life? Look at that BS artist, Jordan Peterson. What does he tell everybody? You have to, they should be eating a carnivore diet, that all these psych medicines are good, while he's addicted to benzodiazepines, and he pretends to be religious, and he's not really religious. Don't be surprised if he's sort of like the Antichrist in costume. I'm telling you, he is brilliant on psychology, and I have heard him say a lot of good things. But I can also tell you, I don't think he's really a Christian. I think he's part of the big money movement to eventually you-know-what side the Christians. And I say that based on a close study of him. I was trying to understand him, and that was a conclusion I came to after really studying him. Okay, and then look at all the stuff that once you divorce yourself from ethics, get away from man is created in the image of God. They're using maid medical assistants in dying in Canada and other places, and they're using that to bump off teenagers, okay? Besides, yeah, I know it's more old people than teenagers, but they're doing it to teens too. And they're also declaring that young people can consent. They call them mature minors. That's insane. A young kid doesn't have the maturity to make that decision. They're legalizing more and more of what we would call infanticide, after the kid's up to 28 years of age. In California, they just signed a bill that schools do not need to notify the parents. They can have a child change their gender choice. Change your gender, like you could just change your gender. Plenty of guys in divorce court would like to change their gender to female and come out of that better if they could, but they can't. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, the new law in California says that the kids can change their gender and not tell their parents, which means they're setting themselves up for those puberty blockers, which are castration drugs and the castration surgery. They call it gender affirming surgery. That's just putting a euphemism to what is really a mutilation and sterilization of a child. It's ridiculous, okay? And like I said, too, the old definition of science used to be, to answer a question, to have, a falsifiable theory that you can make predictions about, that you can test with experiments, that the experiment results were reproducible. Now what science means is whatever big money damn well says it is, and you better shut up, okay? That's what it means, okay? Bullying is what science is now. You must obey because our expert who we paid for tells you this, okay? And like I said, too, the metabolism chapters in the biochemistry books, they're all full of lies. Nothing about mitochondrial inhibitors, SERCA inhibitors, F-, GP, all the stuff that actually matters, okay? You go to a psychologist textbook, they can't even tell you the difference between a male and a female. That's a joke. How can a psychologist give useful information about relationships when they don't even know the difference between a man and a woman? It's a joke, okay? You need God to make things work. Look at Voltaire. He said, I want my doctor and my tailor to believe in God so they don't rob me. He also said it's dangerous to be right when the established are wrong. I'm very fond of truth, but not at all of martyrdom, in meaning that people have to be allowed to have free speech so they can work, through a dialogue towards the truth. Okay? It shouldn't just be, big brother and the party is always right. Anything that big brother and the party and big money wants, anybody who contradicts it, that's misinformation. It's all BS, okay? Now, here's a professor. This guy was in San Antonio in Texas, St. Philip's College, and he said that sex is determined by chromosomes, and he got fired for saying that. Everybody knows sex is determined by chromosomes. Everybody knows that a man has a Johnson and a woman has a Virginia, okay? When cattle are born, you're the farmer and you just have a baby calf. You look at the crotch, okay? If it's a Virginia, it's a female. If it's a Johnson, it's a male. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that is correct. Everybody knows that's how it always was. But now you're not allowed to say that. Are humans different than all other mammals on the planet that, you can't tell a man by a Johnson and a woman by a Virginia? Come on, give me a break. Everybody knows it's BS. Why do they cave to that pressure? Everybody knows the public's being gaslit. All of this stuff, lesbian, gay, transgender, is largely gaslighting by big money, by the demo you-know-what crats, because they don't want the American public. They want any type of sex is good as long as it doesn't produce a baby. So heterosexual married sex is evil because it produces babies, but every other type of perversity is good because it doesn't produce babies. That's kind of what it comes down to. And they're sterilizing all these young women. These young women are, a bunch of ignoramuses. They don't know what's happening. You are being sterilized. If you're a young woman, by the chemicals in your food, the chemicals in your water, the chemicals in your personal care product, etc. You are being sterilized, okay? I've gone through all the chemistry. Look it up yourself. You will see that is a true statement. And you're also being mentally sterilized because women are told that basically your life is meaningless unless you have a good career, that homemakers, housewives who have a big family, they're a bunch of losers. So all these women are trying to push to get educated, and all of a sudden they get to their mid-30s and their clock is ticking and they're like, hey, I think I'd like a family. All my friends who have kids, they seem so happy. Why can't I do that? And then by the time they get to that point, they've probably already been sterilized. I know lots of real pretty female doctors. Never got married, never have any kids. They're going to be very lonely when they get older. Okay, and it's all Trojan horse BS, where it comes in as a gift. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Okay, Odysseus invented the Trojan horse. All right, and then we talked a little bit about science really came from the Catholic Church. I don't know if you saw my art video. I had paintings of artists. So this is Copernicus by Jan Matejko, the Polish artist, and he came up with the fact that the Earth is not in the center, it's the sun. There was still the issue of epicycles for the planetary orbits. And then Johann Kepler figured that out, the genius. Okay, and he talked about it. Science comes from the Catholic Church. If you actually read a couple of history books, you will see that that is the case, and it comes from the Catholic Church for multiple reasons. Not the least of which is because the idea of man is created in the image of God. Therefore, he too can be a creator. We have a rational universe that we can understand. That God wants us to study it. He made us able to understand Him and created us like Him so that we could understand Him and His world. The world is rational, not sort of a pantheistic chaos, not one of these godless religions. Okay. Okay, Isaac Newton, smartest man who ever lived, was also one of the most religious. He spent a lot more time writing Bible commentary than he did doing science. Okay, and when you look at the great creators, inventors, you'll see that's a standard theme, like Johann Sebastian Bach, everything I do is for the glory of God. Michelangelo, everything I do is for my trust and hope that I put in God. You see, it's one after another of all these great geniuses, okay? Okay, well then of course, that was from another talk here. I'll skip that slide. All right, so where did science start? It starts from the Catholic Church. If you want to read about the history of science, just get an idea of it, take a look at this book, For the Glory of God, the book by Rodney Stark. It outlines, and I've read this in a bunch of other sources too, the modern scientific method comes out of the Catholic Church, all these Catholic scientists, like I just showed you a couple of them, okay? I'm not going to go into all this religious stuff, but if you study it, you will see it. I'll show you another slide or two. You can read it for yourself if you want. The medieval universities, and really what led the way was, in my opinion now a little bit here, is it's the Aristotelian strain of Christianity coming through Thomas Aquinas, going into the universities of Paris and France, and subsequently into the Italian Renaissance and the other European universities and whatnot. The other strain of Christianity, the other large one, is largely the Plato going into Augustine, leading to Luther, the Protestantism. Protestantism was more Bible-based and kind of narrow in its focus. Okay, and Rodney Stark, he makes all kinds of comments like only in Europe did alchemy develop into chemistry, astrology into astronomy. And the other, great genius guy, Stephen Meyer, it's not a matter of debate that science as we know it arose in Europe. Edward Grant, it's indisputable that modern science emerged in Western Europe and nowhere else. Science in its modern form arose in Western civilization alone because only the Christian West possessed the necessary intellectual presuppositions. Okay, so all these people who've actually studied the history of science will tell you it came out of Christianity, Catholicism specifically, and in Western Europe. And why is that relevant? What is being destroyed right now? All of Western Europe is being destroyed. Big money is forcing open the borders in all of Western Europe, in the USA, and Australia, and New Zealand, and in Ireland, and all of these countries are being destroyed. Why? Because they don't want freedom. They don't want this idea of all men are equal in the eyes of God, okay? Like Ayn Rand had said, if you guarantee individual rights, all the other rights follow from that. The smallest minority is the individual, okay? So the most important thing is to guarantee individual rights. And so anyways, I see where all this is going. I wish more people realized it so that we can keep freedom in the world. It'd be nice to keep freedom. People say to me, oh, why do I talk about religion and all this stuff? And I'll tell you why I talk about it. What good is it to have a perfect cholesterol if you're just a slave, okay? I'd like to be free. I'd like to be free and have a perfect cholesterol, okay? So we need free speech. We need to be able to talk with each other. Here's a quote by Alfred North Whitehead. He said, science arose in Europe because of the widespread faith in the possibility of science. They had the proper metaphysics and values to let it flourish. In China, if you made a big invention and started to make money with it, the rulers would just take it away from you. So your property was not secure, and that destroyed the incentive. Okay, Alfred North Whitehead continues. Widespread faith in the possibility of science, derivative from medieval theology, the belief that every detailed occurrence can be correlated with its antecedents in a definite manner, because God was rational. And once you get rid of man created in the image of God, all you care about is making money. And you don't care if you poison them or ripping them off. And that's what happens to the poor proles. Okay? When there is no God, there are just competitive groups who tend to dehumanize each other, and everything kind of gets worse for everybody. If you look at the Jesus way of talking, love thy neighbor, forgive each other, give each other the benefit of the doubt, then you have a ripple effect. Everybody's nice to each other. Treat others as you would wish to be treated. Okay, and here's what it comes down to. We're either going to, sort of have a biblical revival that man's creating the image of God. We're going to be nice to each other. We're all going to help each other out. Or we're going to end up in this nonsense over here with the goal. You can look it up on the guide, stones in Georgia, okay, to drop the population numbers down to what is wanted, is, less than 500 million, which means a 95% decrease. And we certainly don't want that. There's not going to be a lot of musical chairs left over. So anyways, hopefully science will improve and hopefully things will be better for everybody.